I got a few notes here, but don't get too worried. I'll make this pretty short, actually. I don't have the stamina I used to have. But anyway, my name is Don. I'm an alcoholic.
How you doing? Don?
And my sobriety date is 3 o'clock in the morning on 22nd of May, 1985.
Stool if you need it.
And I haven't had a desire to stop drinking since that time, and I attribute that to the grace of God, who in the big book says that he would help me if I sought him, which I have. And also to the 12-step program of Alcoholics Anonymous. One of my first 3 sponsors drilled into my head to do the 12-step. It was a program of action. It was not just a fellowship. It was just not, getting together and sharing war stories. It was working the program called the 12 Steps of Alcoholics Anonymous. What it was like, what happened, and what it was like now. Back in the day, I was born in 1938, and January of 1938. It was just in the middle, just after the Great Depression and the end of Prohibition and the beginning of World War II in 1941. Actually, the war began before that. So it was a pretty rough period, and my father was a low-bottom drunk. He was a skilled tool and die maker. He could get a job anytime, especially in a wartime environment. He could work 2 weeks, and you had to work 2 weeks in order to get a paycheck. You didn't get paid the first week, you got paid after the second week, and then he'd get drunk again. My mother worked 2 jobs to try to keep the family going. Like I said, there was no welfare. She had a full-time job in the day, and she had another job at night. And I started drinking actually when I was about 10 years old. I felt happy, joyous, and free the first time I tried it. And what it was is I was born on the east side of Detroit, and we were about a block from a lot of the big factories that were in a wartime environment. The Hudson Motor Car Company was only a block down the street from us. And but anyway, when I was about 10 years old, a bunch of us kids would go to the local market across the street, a mom and pop market back in the day. They had a lot of them. And there was one right on the corner across the street. We'd go in there. Half the kids would buy candy to attract the owner, and the other half of us would steal a couple of quarts of beer out of the cooler. And then we'd go behind our house. There was a bunch of tenement buildings back there. It smelled like rats downstairs. And we go in there with 4 straws, or how many straws we need, because we heard that if you drank beer through a straw, you'd get drunk faster. And that's where my adventure with alcohol kind of really began. But I went through. Actually, I drank until I was about 40 some odd years old, I guess it was. But I started drinking then, and the kids I hang around with, they had older brothers that would buy beer, and we'd play baseball and drink beer. I mean, I was about 11 or 12 years old. I got through school okay, went to high school, drank through all of high school, off and on, mostly party and stuff, but, every time I started drinking, I couldn't stop drinking until I was drunk on my ass. And then I went to college for a couple of semesters, and then when I was about 12 years old, maybe a little older, or no, I guess 15 or 16, I guess it was. My mother divorced my father. She couldn't take it anymore, and he moved out to Waltham, Massachusetts, and he died on Skid Row, 60 years old. I went on we moved to Long Beach, California, and I started going to school at Long Beach City College. That was a pretty good deal because tuition was really cheap out there. I drank myself through there, managed to get through Long Beach City College, and got accepted to UCLA and went a semester at UCLA, and drank most of the time there. And I was at a party one night, and a guy come in, and there was a guy, a sergeant, and he worked at March Air Force Base. And I was crying in my beer, and I said, I really don't want to be an engineer, He says, well, what do you want to do? I said, hell, I don't know, but I know I don't want to be an engineer. And he says, well, he said, you could enlist in the aviation cadet program. You could become a pilot. I said, wait a minute. How do you do that? I said, I thought you had a college degree. He says, no, all you have to do in those days, it was called the aviation cadet program, was have a high school diploma and qualify, go through an exam. It was a week-long exam at March Field as it was. And so anyway, I proceeded to keep on drinking that night. And he said, go enlisted. He said, but I got to warn you, when you talk to that recruiting officer, you tell him that if he wants you to enlist and say there's no programs available for, aviation cadet program, he'll say there's none available, but then you tell him that you've got a college exemption, which is back in the day there was a draft, but if you were in college, you got exempted from the draft. So then, sure enough, I get to the recruiting station the next morning with a hangover, and in downtown Long Beach, California. And sure enough, the recruiting officer said, well, we don't have a slot right now, but you can enlist. I said, no, I've got a college exemption. He said, hold on a second. I said, let me go talk to the captain. So he goes out, I think he smoked a cigarette. He came back and said, oh yeah, we got one slot. So, make a long story short, I started cadet training in March of 1959, I believe it was, yeah. And my memory's not as good as it used to be. And at the time we had civilian instructors, and I was an aviation cadet. I was sort of not an officer, and I was not an enlisted guy. I was somewhere in between there. And the training was pretty rigorous. It didn't really get a chance to drink for the first, it was broken up into 3 phases. There was pre-flight, there was primary and basic. Pre-flight was like 3 months of hell, and you couldn't go anywhere. You were restricted to the base. You ate at attention. You marched everywhere. You had 3 hours of physical training every day, and so you didn't really get a chance to drink very much there. And got through that. Went into primary training. My instructor was a sawed-off World War II Navy pilot, and he smoked cigars, and we'd take off, and he'd start smoking a cigar as soon as we lifted the gear up. And I'm doing all these maneuvers and everything for the cockpit full of smoke, and I always knew when the last landing was because he said, open the canopy. And the day you could take him, slide the canopy back, and he'd throw a cigar out. That's when I knew, the flight was over. But anyway, and then we had like I said, we had civilian instructors and we had a military check pilots. But the civilian instructors a lot of them were just drunks like I was. And in fact, we found one morning one instructor didn't show up, and they sent all of us cadets out to the flight line to find him, because he usually slept in a plane out. That was his habit. Sure enough, we found him in a plane. He was passed out. But anyway, he didn't fly anyway. I don't know how I got off of that tangent. But anyway, during that period, my mom, like I said, she had to work 2 jobs to hold the family together, and that just wasn't very much fun. But I want to say right at the start, I didn't drink alcohol because I was I had a bad life or anything like that. I drank alcohol because basically I liked the effect of alcohol, and I kept drinking eventually until I got drunk and passed out just about every time. So what happened was, I was retired from the Air Force, and I was at home, and all of a sudden I had this sinking feeling that I was going to lose my family if I didn't stop drinking. I'd already missed my oldest son's high school graduation because I was too drunk to go, and he asked me not to go. It broke my heart. And but that was just one indication, and I knew that my marriage was going to last much longer, and I did not want to lose my family, because basically I'm a selfish, self-centered son of a bitch. And so that's really, the SOH just kind of stood me in good stead for a little bit there anyway. And so I called my oldest son and my daughter. I called Scott Air Force Base because I qualified for their 28-day recovery program. And I called my oldest son. He was living in Belleville, Illinois at the time, which was pretty close to Scott Air Force Base. And he and my daughter came and got me to take me back. My daughter was living there as well. And so I stayed in his apartment that night, and then the next morning I went to Scott because I had an appointment. And I found out that I wasn't going to be entering the recovery program. It was just an interview to see if I qualified for the program. So I said, oh crap, what am I going to do now? Well, what I did then is I went back home and I stopped at the liquor store and got my first quart of vodka. And I drank through that. And then later in the afternoon, I went back to the liquor store, got a second quart of vodka, and pretty much drank most of that. And then for some reason at 3 o'clock in the morning on the 22nd of May, I had this urgency to get up off my butt and go and call AA because I didn't know what else to do, I guess. It was kind of funny because I'd never been in my son's apartment at the time. He was, like I said, he was going to college at Parks near St. Louis. He was in engineering, a student. And I'd never been in his apartment before. So I knew where the phone was. It was in the kitchen, but I didn't know where the phone book was. So I'll be darned, I go in the kitchen, and I'm drunk on my ass too. I mean, I got to close one eye to read the phone book. But anyway, the first drawer I opened up, the phone book was there. And the first page that I turned to in the phone book was the phone number for Alcoholics Anonymous. And so I called them, and the operator answered and said, oh, we'll have somebody call you back. And I thought, oh yeah, sure. So hung up, sat back down, started drinking some more vodka. And sure enough, about 20 minutes later, a guy named Rick called me. And he was from the group in Belleville, Illinois. I can't remember the name of the group anymore. And he invited me to come to a meeting. He asked me if I needed a ride, and I said, no, my son can take me. It was in downtown Belleville, Illinois. And Rick met me at the door, but no, he didn't meet me at the door. I walked in the door, and there was a bunch of people in there. I mean, there was probably 25, 30 people in there. There was a small storefront door in downtown Belleville. And I felt a little uncomfortable, and the first thing I did is I went into the men's room just to do something to do. And I noticed there was a poster on the mirror in there, and it was a poem by Helen Mellecote. And it's really stuck with me all my life. And the name of the poem was I Am. And I started reading. It was a pretty short poem. I can pretty well recite most of it. And it said, if you live in the past, I am not there. My name is not I was. If you live in the past, I am not there. I mean, if you live in the past, I am not there. My name is not I have been. But if you live in the now, I am here. My name is I am. And I am in Hebrew is translated to Jehovah. So that was the first thing that made a pretty good impression on me. And then the second one is the meeting started, and we went through the whole thing, and I never got a chance to talk. I just, everybody was talking to me, telling me, what was going on. And but the things I heard were really important. First of all, it was a program of action. Well, let me back up. So first of all, I didn't have to stay sober the rest of my life, because that's what scared the hell out of me. Because I figured there ain't no way I could stay sober the rest of my life. I can't even stay sober the rest of the week. And so they told me I don't have to do that. I only have to stay sober one day at a time. And I broke that down into less than one day at a time. I broke that down after the meeting, and I said I could stay sober to the next meeting, which is at 8 o'clock that night. And then when I got out of that meeting, I said I could stay sober until I could go to sleep tonight. And then I'd do that over and over for several days, maybe several weeks. And the other thing I heard was that it was a 12-step program, and that I should work those steps if I expected to stay sober. And also to get a relationship with a higher power, because he said in the book, the big book, that he would help me if I sought him. And so I did try to do all those threes to the best of my ability. And I was only there another day or two, and then Rick gave me the phone number of a guy in Branson, and it happened to be the Shepard of the Hills group. And a guy named Larry Semery was the GSR at the time there. And he had a Culligan water business of some kind. But anyway, I went to the meeting there, and then Larry turned me over to another guy in Branson West named Jim Reed. And Jim Reed was kind of an interesting guy because he was a retired air traffic controller. And he also was the head of the drug and alcohol program at, I believe it was Mercy Hospital in Springfield. It was called Bridgeway. So he knew pretty much about the AA program and how the program worked and so forth. So he turned out to be a really good sponsor, and he really emphasized working those steps. And he also, I told him that in the meantime, I told Jim that I had been given a slot at the recovery program at Scott Air Force Base. And I said, I really don't think I want to go. He said, no, you need to go to that program. And I'm really grateful I did, because it was basically a 12-step program. And we covered all the steps and in detail. We even went to meetings. The group would organize a bus for us to go to a meeting in town. So we went to a lot of AA meetings as well. But we had a lot of good speakers at those meetings too. And we watched films like the old Father Martin films. Everybody, I think a lot of the old timers remember those movies. They were really good. But anyway, like I said, I'm really grateful to God because He did give me that gift of desperation. I owe it to Him and His 12-step program that I'm still alive today. And so anyway, that's about all I've got. That's about the name of that tune. I don't really have much more to say, and I appreciate your kind attention. Thank you.